This thing happens when women speak, and it happens even though women can vote, and even though women can work, and even though we as a culture have said that sex discrimination is largely wrong. Their words leave their mouths and they enter the universe and they mix with all of the bullshit that we still believe about women and about sex and about gender, and they become shrill and unfounded and doubted. But a woman just said that, so don't believe it.
Last semester, in October or September, Jamie reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join the planning committee for this unbelievable event that she was trying to create.
That's what she said. It started out a couple different channels, I would say, but a large part of what happened was, so I got into a discussion with a friend, and I am a women and gender studies graduate student, and I am a woman, and I spend a lot of time thinking about gender, and he was still the expert in this conversation. It was so interesting because I was telling him what I thought about all of these things, and I was making all of these educated remarks, I would say, and he just kept pushing back and was not having it. And then another man stepped into the conversation who had sort of been watching from a distance, and he repeated literally everything I had been saying for the last 45 minutes. And the first guy totally de-escalated and was like, yes, exactly. So I was pissed, right? And it also that's Tuesday, right? That's just another day for a lot of us to go through this experience. And I was just so sick of people telling me that if women were more logical in our arguments, that we would progress further, or that things would go better for us. And I was like, well, fuck it. What if we put that on display, right? What if we take this thing that happens all the time that drives so many of us crazy, and instead we put it into this somewhat controlled environment.
One of the goals of this event is to start the fundraising process for a scholarship that we hope to distribute starting in the fall semester. So we're calling the scholarship the Women of Auraria Scholarship, and it's intentionally designed to support students on this campus who are doing work around social justice or equity outside of their classrooms, outside of the classes or their coursework. And this scholarship is a way to recognize that work and to sort of reward people who are doing that work.
That's what art and culture can do in small steps, is sort of move people in a direction that they never thought they would move in.
Really, I love that people love the idea of that's what she said, but I think part of the reason that people are responding to it is because we're not actually doing anything novel, right? We're just taking this thing that happens all of the time and we're sort of facilitating it, and asking very good, cool guys to help us put it on display.
Some of our stories are about harassment, discrimination, and assault, and other stories are just about the ways that we come to understand how to do our gender in the world, and specifically how women learn how to perform their gender role correctly. So not everything that we'll be talking about is about harassment or discrimination or assault. A lot of it is, because those are a lot of the stories that women have and that women want to talk about.
What has come in is stories from high school students all the way to 65-year-old women, and that's what we know of. Not everyone has identified themselves with that much information, but I'm amazed at how many stories we've gotten that end with something along the lines of, and I never told anyone until now. That's been simultaneously really cool and really hard.
Was to submit the story that I chose because when I told friends what happened, I had too many of them tell me that the exact same thing had happened to them, and I thought it was utter trash that so many people had gone through a very similar or exact same experience, and they thought that it was normal, that they couldn't talk about it. And so for me, it was really important to share my story this time because I felt that other people should know that they're not alone. And I also submitted it, frankly, because I'm still pretty angry, and I want other people to know that these things are not okay, so that way they don't do them as well, and that things that they may think is a joke to them is not a joke to the people that they're doing things to.
I did submit a story. I submitted two. I submitted a funny one, a little bit more lighthearted one, and then I also submitted a more serious one. For me, it was important, or is important for me to share the stories and experiences that I have had, to be able to hopefully shed some light on how other people experience gender in their own lives.
I did submit a story myself. I actually submitted 2 stories. I had read everybody's, and they're all so diverse and beautiful and heartbreaking and important, and I felt very insecure about lending my own voice to it, and I think that comes back to my gender identity and my gender construction as why am I insecure about my voice, and that's also why this event is so important. And I could have written 50 stories, and it was really cathartic to write them down, and I shared them with my partner and realized he hadn't even heard of one of the experiences and was pretty shocked by it. Well, for me, it's something I've been living with for 15 years.
Scared little songbird, how lovely, how cozy you are, throw you out, you're just.
Give yourself to others because that's the ultimate in the business world. It seems that.
I will not give up this bench. You cannot.
I'm excited for it, and terrified. Mostly for my end, just being on stage. I'm terrified of that, but I think it's exciting. I hope a lot of people attend and understand the purpose of it all.
It's pretty nerve-wracking to get something that you've never read before and get up there on a stage and say it in front of a bunch of people.
It's really exciting, especially not knowing what's going to come out.
Yeah.
I'm most nervous, not necessarily by getting up and speaking, but just giving the language and the words on the page the justice. I think it's really hard to cold read something and just like you have no idea the context or anything, and so I want to make sure that when I read it, like I read it with the dignity that it deserves to be read.
Every time I get to work with the guys, I feel more and more comfortable that they are going to be, I think they're going to really like moved by these stories to laughter and to more like serious reactions, but I think that they're so prepared for it. Every time I do it, it's just like, I meet with them, it's like, you know, just a little bit lighter and lighter and lighter because they've totally got this. And the women have done such an amazing job of being so vulnerable and providing us, like every time I pick up the stories and work with those more, I'm like, wow. Like, so, just their willingness to be vulnerable and share these like very intimate parts of their lives in such an articulate way. I'm like, just so appreciative that they would do that for us. And then I might offer some more advice. I would say,
So I'm hoping that the patriarchy crumbles by 9:15. That's what I think is going to happen. You heard it here first.
This evening will feature some very traumatic, sometimes, content, particularly content around sexual violence. We received an overwhelming number of stories from people who disclosed their history with sexual violence, and we're grateful to those of you who are able to share while recognizing that this may not feel safe for all people. We've chosen to read some of these stories tonight, not to traumatize or re-traumatize, but because we know that the reason why sexual violence continues to exist and thrives is due to silence.
My aunt told me men were just better at things, like fixing computers, as I was sitting there, fixing her computer.
I went on a run, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the running shifts, but they're a real thing. Right before we're gonna hang out, he confesses to me that he's 28 and has 2 kids. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm into older guys, but are you kidding me? I always used to ask my father to take me to work with him, but he always said no.
I never thought our flirtation would go anywhere.
The bathroom and stuffed toilet paper in my underwear to soak up the blood.
I told him that it's not a big deal, and asked if he ever bought tampons for my mom before, and he said that he hadn't. He told me it's not manly.
I did not fully consider my first sexual intercourse experience as one involving coercion. He was a star baseball player and in one of the most popular fraternities. He told me it would be over soon. Finally, I gave up. Tears streamed from my eyes into the now-soaked pillow, blood all around me.
Should I be more disturbed by my shame and crying, or by the fact that those men might never think on that moment again?
Because you shouldn't have to feel like you are asking for something, or that you don't have the right to be alone, or that the shit you wear on your ass or your hand conveys some language of availability or property, and you shouldn't have to feel embarrassed or afraid to be out in public, or that if this bullshit ever fucking stops, it's somehow a failure on your part as a woman, as an object of desire, that you're worth so much more than this. Because you have the right to be out in public. You have the right to feel safe. You're enough. You know that? You're enough. You know that? This time is not a question.
My hope is that that's what she said stands out in a way that it leaves people thinking about these like more insidious forms of sexism. I guess I just hope that people will feel that and feel it in a way that leads them to reflect on it and think just a little differently in their interactions.